in the beginning. It's like, start again.
Okay. Let's do it. Okay, so welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we've got Julia Wolfendale in, who's owner of On the Up Consulting, executive business coach, and much more that we'll find out as we go along. Welcome.
Thank you, James. Great to be here with you today.
Yes. So tell us about On the Up Consulting, tell us about what you do.
Okay, so I started On the Up Consulting 8 years ago. So 8 years in business now, which has been a very quite challenging but really fulfilling time.
Yeah.
And I set up the organisation because I wanted to do something that felt really purposeful and positive. Got a real interest in people and their behaviour. And through coaching, I found that this is a really great way to help people understand why they do what they do, what's getting in their way, how to overcome some of those blocks and those barriers and those self-limiting beliefs, and really help people get things on the up.
Right.
So, as I say, on the up, that's the main aim, to help people, get things going well in their work, their careers, and that whole balance of life, so that they can feel purposeful, fulfilled, and positive.
Have you always done that?
So, no, I've had quite, I think, as most people, a checkered career path. And when you start out at university and you think, what can I be? I did set myself an intention. I was going to be marketing director. I can remember writing that. They must have asked us at university. I was doing a business studies degree. What are you going to be? What are you going to do? And I said, I want to be a marketing director by the time I was 30. And I think I was, just shy of 30 by the time I made that. So I left university with a business studies degree, having had a placement year, actually, which is fantastic, with an FMCG company at Bath Brewers.
Right.
But that was a bit surprising to me because I didn't really drink.
Okay.
My dad, though, was brilliant. He said, I was proud of you getting that role as if you'd gone to Oxford or Cambridge, because I'd get free beer. And, that worked out really well, living in a student house while everyone else is on their third year, their final year, and I'm on my third year out. And, the parties were great because the staff shop had a great allowance. I think I got £120 allowance at cost price.
Quite a lot.
It was quite a lot from the staff shop. So I was always bringing home, great quantities of alcohol for my student friends, which was fun. But it's a bit strange working, that whole year. But I did leave with my degree, with having had a year in business, which was fabulous, and loved marketing, and I was really fortunate to get my first job. Left uni in the June and started in the September at Adidas in Hazel Grove, and loved that in the marketing department there, and had some fantastic opportunities. Remember meeting David Beckham I think he's 2 years younger than me, so he was going to be like, and Victoria, and this is back in the day, this is like 96. Just as he was getting going, just being signed by Adidas. So that was great. And then I did become marketing director at Helly Hansen before I was 30. And then took a turn, had children, and decided that international travel wasn't for me. It was really hard being stranded at Schiphol Airport while my 6-month-old baby, Nemini, I wasn't able to get home for him. My husband had to take it straight off work. And it was like, maybe, this isn't the right time in my life to be doing this kind of international travel. So I had a rethink. And I thought, if I'm going to, have Nemini looked after during the week by my mum, if I'm going to do this, this kind of work, that doesn't feel quite right. It didn't feel as fulfilling. So I kind of turned my back on sales of ski wear and marketing, brand marketing with climbers and snowboarders, and thought, what else could I do? And I worked for Manchester City Council. And I worked there for 13 years, it was much longer than I'd planned. Working in children's services, commissioning services. I did my coaching qualification while I was there, and my master's in leading and managing. And I always knew I was going to run my own brand now. I knew I was going to create something that where I could work in the way I wanted to. So On the Up was born.
I want to tell you about the year in industry. As in my mind, that's quite a male-dominated industry.
It so was.
Is it quite eye-opening with?
Yes. Just with you saying that, one particular example comes to mind, and that's not to wear high heels while visiting a brewery,
Right.
and climbing the metal wrought iron steps.
Yeah.
That they insist you climb in order to peer down into the vat. Say, that smells like beer. And I just had totally the wrong outfit on. But, wearing the right outfit has always been a really big priority for me. Trying to get work where you actually get to wear the outfit you want to wear. It seems like the right way to operate for me. So, that it was very much male dominated. I'm sure they hadn't thought about high heels when they made those staircases for peering into vats.
Yeah.
Do
you feel that gave you some good experience to, because the marketing world, if you believe Mad Men and all that kind of stuff in those days, it is a very kind of male-dominated industry at one point, and that brings, especially in a few years ago, it brings different. I'm searching for the words. Yeah, you're exposed to a language and an approach
very
to work
true.
that's very different.
Yeah, and especially in an industry where it's about beer and alcohol.
Yeah.
And the trade shows were very much dominated by male sales reps and male account managers, and all of there was 3 marketing business units when I was at Bass Brewers, and the senior marketers were all guys.
Yeah.
But they'd had young women my age as their placements, which was interesting, that the interns they brought in were young women. But I didn't have any role models in that job, actually, of women that had risen to the high ranks in, So now you mention that.
We had an actress come in yesterday and talk about her life, and something she talks about is working in a restaurant when she was 16 and being a very kind of innocent 16-year-old girl who then is open to the adult world, and she felt like being able to deal with that and that experience and seeing how other people cope with it as well was helped her go into the big wide world of auditioning and being her as a business, and that kind of, I suppose the strength that you need in that, in character. Do you think that might have helped you? Or?
I think so, and I think I've always been a very sort of determined person, and I probably think less about the context that I'd be working in and more about the work that I'd be doing and how fulfilling might that be, and how does that get me to, where I want to be ultimately. So, Adidas was a bit more mixed. There were some senior women in roles there. But I grew up with 3 brothers, and thankfully my dad, I feel I was treated pretty equally. I think they'll probably say I had an advantage, and I had my dad round my little finger. But I never, generally from my parents, they've always, expected that we would all, supported us all to do well, and I don't think I was ever given less opportunity than my brothers. No. And I've certainly had to stand up for myself with the 3 of them.
That's what I mean. It takes a bit of, inner strength, and that you've got to compete in that. If you've got 3 older brothers, you're competing for food at the dinner table.
Oh, completely, And I did have to salvage my Barbies because they were tied to trees, and and they were used in, in all sorts of Action Man games that they did not want to be part of. No. But that was part of being a woman in the world, even at a young age. It's just like, well, speak up for yourself, say what you want, say what you need. I've always found that kind of quite easy, but I really recognise through coaching women that that's not necessarily the way things are for them. And I do work with a lot of women who are working in very male dominated industries, work with a lot of women in property, which is a fabulous network, actually, Women in Property Network. Coaching women in organisations that are quite male dominated and sectors, law, property, and even sometimes in NHS at senior level. So it's I think that women do have to find what it is that they're really looking for and find a way to speak up for that and find a path towards that. And there may be blocks along the way. Yeah. But I think self-belief is an important thing to have. Yeah.
And another kind of topic that comes up a lot with in the podcast is that, well, when you start a family, well, how do you still work, and what priorities change? And that seemed like it was some big thing for you and what you do. And I'm sure it was a bit of a change going from Adidas to Helly Hansen to the council. I'm sure
very much. Yeah, very much. And I can remember somebody who I really respected and really loved, and he is in a really senior role at Helly Hansen, and he'd just gone to an international role, and I said, I'm going. And he said, oh, Julia, he said, you're going to really struggle at the council. So I said, why? I said, I need to do it. It's a time in my life, I've got very flexible working. I can't do the international travel anymore. And I need to do something with a real social purpose. This feels like I'm going to help. I'm going to work in a really deprived part of the city, and I'm going to commission children's services. And he went, Julia, you're not going to be able to make your own decisions. I'm like, okay. I completely ignored that. He was so right. And that was one of the things that I struggled with the most. I couldn't make my own decisions. I could speak up and I could say, I think we should do this. And, things were so bureaucratic, and I'm quite, if I can see it and I can say it, I can make it happen. Right. Left to my own devices. It's not like that when you're working in a big bureaucratic organisation. So I do respect people who, I coach a lot in the NHS. I really respect that, those things, those big unwieldy organisations, it is hard to influence and to make change. And that's something I really enjoy doing, actually working with people who are, wanting to innovate and help them find ways to make the difference in their own way. And it was something that I found really challenging. Yeah. But then my final role there, and this is something I use when I'm coaching, actually, I always say to people, what does your best last day look like? Yeah. And when I took my last job at the council, I knew it was going to be my last job. Right. And I thought, I'm going to do this for 2 years and then I'm out. And I was a behaviour change programme lead. And I was given the opportunity to test and try out. I was in a team called Reform and Innovation, which is just my world, because I was given some freedom to test and try out different ways of having conversations with community using a strength-based approach, which I've gone on and I've used the strength-based approach throughout my coaching, over nearly the last decade. And I was given freedom there, and I did really respect who I was working for, and I loved that. But as an organisation, public sector, it's hard to navigate the bureaucracy.
Very different world, aren't they, really?
Yep, yeah.
Good in some ways and frustrating in others. So what attracted you to the coaching side of things?
I think just the idea that through conversation, through compassionate listening, empathetic listening, getting to understand somebody by listening, but more importantly, helping them understand themselves. What attracts me to that is that's through that self-awareness, somebody can start to think about making a shift, making a change. So once you're aware of it, you can start to bring that into, okay, if I'm not enjoying how I'm being now, if I'm not enjoying how I'm leading, if I'm not enjoying how, whether or not I'm having enough influence and impact, if I'm feeling stuck, once there's an awareness of that and a real clarity and someone has the language to express it themselves, there's an opportunity then to work with that person to help them see a way forward and make changes or change their perspective. And take some really positive steps. And I just find that so fulfilling, that through listening and through asking questions that they've never asked themselves before, or may have asked but not answered. Yeah. Sometimes we do ask ourselves questions, why didn't I do that? But we don't answer it. We just beat ourselves up with that. Why have I done that again?
Or you make excuses for it.
Or you make excuses and you discount it. But when you've got somebody there listening empathetically, and I always say my stance is supportive challenge. you know, I will ask a question that might make someone really...
Some moving around. And...
But put them at their ease, because I care about them finding a better way of being if they're feeling stuck, or if they're feeling frustrated, or if they're feeling they could be, you know, more impactful, or... Yeah.
What do you think the main driver is for people to engage with you for coaching? Is there a pattern that...
Yeah, maybe. I think a lot of the time people are seeking clarity.
Yeah.
I mean, some people might say, oh, they're seeking confidence, but I think it's clarity. I think you can get confidence through clarity. I think sometimes I hear people present that say, oh, I need to build my confidence in this, but then through coaching them, I might see actually there are areas where they could be confident in if they had clarity about their strengths, for example. I do a lot of strengths-based coaching. It's at the core of my work. So a lot of the time when I'm working with somebody, I'm helping them see what strengths they've already got.
Right.
And we've all got hidden strengths. We've all got strengths, firstly, but maybe we don't think about those. Maybe they're not apparent to us. They might be more apparent to our colleagues than they are to us.
Yeah.
Especially if we're focusing a lot on our shortcomings and our limitations and beating ourselves up.
Yeah.
So taking a strengths-based approach is probably something that people do, they've actually respond really positively to. And I think sometimes that's why people seek me out as a coach, because taking that positive position, helping someone see their strengths. So not only then do they see their strengths, it's then about that conversation around, okay, now that you know these are your strengths, what are the ways that you can exhibit them more? What strengths are you overplaying? Because they can lead to weakness, you know, or burnout. What strengths are you underplaying? You know, where's the potential here, but what you're holding back on, or what you're withdrawing from?
Yeah.
And I think when people get a sense of their own strengths, it's an opportunity to realise what's their true potential. And that just excites me beyond anything, because imagine if we were all fulfilling our true potential, you know, what world would we live in if we were all showing up being our best selves more of the time? You know.
I'm obsessed with inner monologue.
Oh, yeah.
So I like to watch people, and I'm always looking, I wonder what's going on in their minds, what they're thinking about. And it's good to be aware of that, I think, because you can become preoccupied with negatives.
Yes.
And I was told about a book called The Golfer's Mind.
Oh, yeah.
And I quote this far too much, but it says that the main difference between a very good club golfer and a professional golfer is a good club golfer might say, be careful of the bunkers.
Okay.
And will more or less hit the bunker every time. And the pro will say, hit the pin.
Yeah.
And although it's the same hole and it's the same task, the mind doesn't understand or can't separate the positive and the negative, and will go to which one you're thinking about.
That's right.
And I find that absolutely fascinating.
Yes. And we do. We all have that kind of unconscious bias, and even if it's said to us, don't do this, we naturally then become conscious of the thing. So a lot of the time we are thinking about what we need to avoid, what we need to be fearful of, you know, what could happen. And there is the real negative slant then, and it keeps us stuck. It can make us very, you know, less likely to give something a go, more likely to stay in that comfort zone, not trying new things.
I suppose my thought process with that was, you mentioned about getting people to understand what their strengths are. And that's, if you focus on more of a positive thing, you probably become a bit more confident and can communicate better with people.
Yes, focusing on what's strong rather than what's wrong.
Or trying to, being aware of what you can work on and improve it.
Yeah, and that's the opportunity, isn't it? That's the space to grow. That's the space to where the potential lies. And I do think that's around you cutting through the overwhelm sometimes, because that inner monologue can be quite can get very loud and very noisy. And what does it sound like? Is it a critical voice? Is it in a kind, supportive tone? You've got this, James. Or is it, James, why have you done this? What is that inner monologue? What's the tone of that inner monologue? What is it actually trying to say to you? Is it quite a lot of the time it tries to keep us safe. But there's no growth in staying safe. But there are very much times where we just, we need to hunker down and we need to take stock.
I'll bore you with a cricket story. I had, it should have been 94, 95, and we had a guy played in the junior team with me that always played a shot, and then he played about 3 other shots afterwards to air that he thought he should have played to that one. I could never work it out, and then I watched him in the nets with his dad. And after every shot, his dad said 2 or 3 other shots he should have played instead. And it was this kind of learned response.
It was conditioning.
Yeah. And he was preoccupied with what he should have done rather than just, improving what he was doing.
And we are very habitual creatures, so a lot of our actions is the unconscious processing. So I suppose that's the other thing about coaching is we make the unconscious conscious, and when it's conscious, we've talked about it, we can start to have a different view of it. We can start to have a different approach, like not take 3 shots, and it can be quite enlightening for someone when they start to think, oh yeah, I've been doing that. Why am I still doing that? And there's times in your life when those behaviours and those actions might have really served you. And then suddenly actually something different is needed. You need to bring something else to the table now. You're in a new team, you're leading a new organisation, and actually it is about digging deep and go, okay, how can I operate that is perhaps different? And that takes a lot of courage to think about operating differently. Mostly it's within people, it's there, but they've perhaps just not tapped into it for a long time or not tried something out.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any it's probably behaviours that people are doing that are causing them to need to come to you, and there's probably quite a common pattern through them all with many clients. Do you have any?
Yeah, I suppose sometimes for people it's about how do they let go. They may be involved very much, and being able to build that trust with their people, see the strengths in the people that they've employed, and enable them and empower them to kind of step up. Because it can, for someone running an organisation, you carry the weight on your shoulders, and you. If you're very close to the operations side of things, it can be quite hard to then stay in the strategic mindset and keep focusing forwards, when you find yourself very bound up in the operational detail. But having said that, engaging with your employees is really important nowadays. People want to feel valued. They want to feel aligned to the purpose of the organisation, but also having a sense of purpose themselves. So you don't want someone to go so far the other way that they're so completely strategically focused that they've disconnected from how their people are feeling and what will help them stay. Because a lot of organisations struggle to to attract talent nowadays. So developing their people and engaging with them, valuing them, having the right people doing the right roles, getting feedback, a leader who's open to feedback from the people that they've employed is important. I think that creating that sense of psychological safety is really important as well at the moment in organisations. I think sometimes people are a bit wary of the human interaction now. I think we've had so much time away from the office, and then we've had this hybrid for 5 years now. I think people are still trying to kind of navigate and figure out how to manage their people, whilst also keeping strategically focused on the what's coming.
People's a funny thing, isn't it? There's an ex-basketball player called John Amici, who grew up in Manchester. He was talking about that and how the focus shouldn't be on you must come back into the office. It's all what would make them come back into it. What would the interaction look like? It's not so much the work being done, but it's the interactions with people and what other people do in business and what their drivers are and what their the emotional side around what they do and being able to integrate more.
Yeah.
He said it's those conversations that are important that we miss now than anything else.
That's true. Yeah, the interactions are very different. And I think the value in people, recognising them as individuals, as humans, with their different strengths and their different aspirations. And I think recognising that there's a lot of people who is suffering from overwhelm. There's so much stimulation, there's so much information out there. And that's one of the reasons why I'm writing the book, 5 Ways to Focus, which I have a copy of.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, okay. I was going to bring up the book. I was just thinking in my head the questions around that, because obviously there would have been something that would have made you think writing a book would be good to do based on the work that you're doing. Yeah.
I think it tracks back to that idea of overwhelm. There's so much information available to us now, carrying our phones around in our pocket, which I know we've done for a long time, but nowadays it's there's a real blurring of lines between work and home and and social. So there's a lot of people who are now in WhatsApp groups, so their phone is pinging in the evening with work inquiries, work requests, work updates, and it's affecting people in the way that they don't know how to shut off, how to kind of have boundaries, and how to focus on the things that really matter. So it's affecting people in terms of their information overload and overwhelm. And so writing the book was around how do you help people just kind of take stock, deal with the overwhelm, get some clarity, get some perspective, focus on what matters. When we focus on what matters, everything changes. When we focus on everything, we get overwhelmed. So it was very much an approach of helping people just take stock, slow down, and should we just see what's really important here. There's stuff going on. There'll always be stuff. What do we need to pay attention to, and what would happen if we did?
Yeah. There's one thing having an idea to write about. There's another one doing it. You know what? So I'm sure that was a big challenge, actually, from even putting the words down to actually having a physical book, which is amazing. It's a thing. It's a
real thing.
It's real thing. It's there, and it's manifested itself, and people read it. I just think that's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
What was the main kind of challenge with that for you?
I think the main kind of challenge you alluded to is just putting words on paper. Yeah. There's a lot of discipline required for writing the book, and like I said before, when I see something and I say I'm going to do it, I normally find a way, because I do hold myself to account. So if I've committed, and if I've told anybody, I'm like, well, I'm going to do that.
That's a skill, isn't it? That's why people use coaches, because they don't hold themselves to account for things that they say.
Yeah. Plus my responsibility strength, when that kicks in, it's like, oh, okay, you said you were going to, your commitment strength, you said you've got to commit now. So, I do have this thing, like, never give up on the thing you can't go a day without thinking about.
Right.
And this kind of tracks back to, so this isn't the first book I've written, actually.
Oh, okay.
I actually started a book when I was 12, because my dad was a journalist, and he took me on a little day out when I was 12 to his office, as it was at the time, to the Daily Mirror in the Printworks building. He showed me how a newspaper was made. he took me to Manchester Museum, and we saw the skeleton of Maharaja, the elephant that was walked from Edinburgh to Manchester Bellevue Zoo.
Yeah.
And then we went to Central Library, and he showed me all the newspaper clippings from like 1872. And I was like, okay, this is the whole process of, something happened.
Yeah.
It was written about, and it was printed in a newspaper. And I did feel quite excited about the idea that, when someone's had an idea or there's been an event, it gets communicated in a way and it lasts forever.
Yeah.
To go through the old archives in Manchester Central Library and seeing the original newspapers was quite interesting. And I went home that day and I started to write. And I had much better handwriting now. I do not know what happened in the years since, because I couldn't possibly write as neatly as that. But I did start to write, and I wrote 3.5 chapters of this story about the elephant that walked to Manchester. And then somehow or other, I lost track of the story, and I didn't go back to it, and I left it. But I always kind of thought about it, and I thought I was going to be a writer at one point. But I hadn't finished this story, so I'm not going to be a writer, clearly, because you can't finish this story, so you're never going to be a writer, and that kind of inner dialogue, inner monologue came in.
Yeah.
And then I was doing my business studies degree at university, and I was struggling taking the notes in the lecture theatre, and I struggled in my A-levels as well to take all the notes down quickly enough. And I went for an assessment, and they said, you're dyslexic. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, that everything's felt hard, but I've always powered through, quite determined. Yes, it might take me longer. I have my own way of thinking. If I read a letter, I'll read the middle and then I'll read the top and the bottom.
That's interesting.
But that's just the way I consume information. So it's a bit unorthodox, but it's how I get my understanding rather than feel overwhelmed by words on a page.
I have a friend, a similar thing, where incredibly a successful, intelligent guy, and he reads the end of words before the start of words. And he said, I've always struggled with it. You would never know, but it's that he was going to get, he did a history degree, I think.
Yeah.
And
that's it. Sometimes interest takes over. So if you're fascinated by the history, you're still going to find out about it, but you're going to find your own way to find out about it. And I always read Under the Covers at Night with a Torch. Every night, always read 8 books. I've always read a lot of things. So that made a little bit more sense to me, really. But then I wrote myself off, and I thought, can't be a writer, you're dyslexic. You've got that now, got that label now. So I really abandoned the whole idea. Clearing out the garage when I was 40, and came across this beautifully worded manuscript, 3.5 chapters of A4, A4 fine lined. Yeah. I thought I'd show this to the girls who were 9 and 12 at the time, and I read them the story, and they went, you've got to finish this. I was like, okay. And then I thought, actually, responsibility strength kicked in, commitment strength kicked in. I thought, you know what I do? Because what kind of role model am I? If I present this half-finished, tatty document to my daughters and they go, you've got to finish it. I go, yeah, well, when you're a kid, you come up with things, you have great ideas, and then you don't pursue them, and then you end up like this. I thought, I can't be that person. Yeah. So fair plays to them. They set me the challenge. I thought, I'm going to write it. Yeah. So I finished it, and I told my dad I was rewriting it, and he was like looking through, and he was like, yeah, this is great, this is great. I'm so pleased you're writing the story. So I did. And I sent it off to some publishing houses, and it got shortlisted. It got shortlisted with Random House. I was so delighted, still couldn't quite believe it. And then they said, yeah, could you make the character younger? And could you change this? And could you change that? And can you make this longer? And I was like, this is not my story anymore. And that's my... Yeah. I'm doing things my way. It's stubbornness, James. That's interesting feedback. Thank you. Yes, that's my... I thought I was going to write a book, the one that I wanted to write. Yeah, so stubbornly, I didn't do anything with it. Okay. So I didn't go back to Random House with a revised manuscript because I still wanted to protect the story I wanted to write. So I forgot all about it. But back to that thing, never give up on the thing you can't go a day without thinking about. Yeah. And I thought, so when it came to lockdown, perfect opportunity. I'm going to publish this book. And also it gave me a chance to try out self-publishing, because really what I need to be getting on with is writing this book. Yeah. So I did. So I went through the whole process, published The Trouble with Elephants, which was nice to take to my dad as an actual book during lockdown. One of the first times we actually got to see him in person. probably in the house and go, well, this is what I've been doing during lockdown. And he couldn't believe it. It was just nice. Yeah, it was nice for him. And then I thought, I know how to write a book. I can get a book into a completed, finished package and self-publish. And the great thing about self-publishing is you go at your own pace. You publish it when you want to. But this is one of 4.
Right.
So it's this. I have the other covers made for the other 3 titles.
Okay.
And the idea is that the next one will follow. And like you said, how do you get that done? Just have to start.
You sent me a copy of this.
Yeah.
And I haven't told you the full story around it. So I took it on holiday with me and I was reading it about the book, as you do. And I read half of it. And the reason why I only read half of it was I relaxed as I was reading it. And I went to the beach instead and just didn't do anything, didn't take anything with me.
Success.
Just went to the beach. So I relaxed, so I watched it. So it was a really funny thing while I'm going, well, I'm reading this and I should really just, but it had that effect on me to go, okay, you're on holiday, separate what you do.
My work is done. That's fantastic. That's music to my ears because the book is about what matters. Yeah. What do you need to focus on? And it's probably a lot less than what we think we need to give our attention to. Yeah. And where attention goes, energy flows. I can't remember who said that, but great quote. And we can't keep giving all our attention to everything equally without something giving. And if it means our relaxation goes out the window or a chance to enjoy a holiday goes out the window, that's not good. We need to recharge, we need to reset. So I'm glad you had that experience of the book.
I've quoted this quite a lot, but so I worked for quite a global IT company, and they were doing some career development things, and we had to write a speech about something. There was a group of us, and we delivered this speech about anything to the group. A guy called Bhavesh, who I'm still really quite close with, and he did a speech about single tasking.
Oh, yes.
And it's just come into my head because he's saying like, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, the multitasking isn't natural for the brain. And the secret is, the way to move forward is to single task and be totally focused on that one thing. And then they're funny, have you ever seen City Slickers?
No.
The film.
No.
It's a film from the 80s, and they go away and they drive cattle from one place to another. Okay. And it's about finding yourself. The city, people work in the city in New York, and it's a Billy Crystal.
Oh, film. Yeah.
Brilliant film. Very funny. And there's an old cowboy called Curly who says, you know what the secret to life is? And he goes, no, so this. Oh. I was like, yes, it's one thing, it's single tasking.
That makes a lot of sense.
But he says it's different for everyone, but that's different. I relate it to that story, single tasking, and it being...
I can relate as well. I can be a very busy person. And I think it's when we tie up busyness with self-worth.
Yeah.
How are you? I'm busy. That's not how you are. Yeah. That's how you're operating,
If you have a family, if you're... it's not just people who are in, really senior roles, but if you have a family and you're preoccupied with stuff at work and then you come home and then you have to be a parent.
Yeah.
Being totally focused and letting that go and focusing on being a parent makes you a good parent rather than someone who's a bit stressed and is not paying attention to anyone or anything. And
when you think about how work used to be, perhaps, our parents' generation or grandparents' generation, people had a single task. Work was quite singularly focused. The role was quite finite, whether it was like a bank teller, just sitting at that point as a cashier and just dealing with that one thing, one transaction at a time. I mean, or operating something in a mill. You just passing the I think it's called a shuttle back and forth. It drive me mad. That would just not be enough brain stimulation for me. But we've gone the other way, haven't we, where we're overstimulated and there's too many things that, and the algorithms do this. They know what we're interested in.
Yeah.
So they keep serving up more. It's like, oh, you're just taking more of my attention. So there's a real discipline in being able to just come back to that point of relaxation, stillness. I do a lot of that, more and more of that in my coaching now. A lot more somatic coaching, helping people to see, okay, how are you experiencing this in your body?
Yeah.
I'm tense. Okay, where if we just had a chat with that place in your body that feels tense, or it's my hands, or it's a pit of my stomach, and getting people to sense when that's happening, because your body does send you the signs that things aren't operating well, that you're feeling overwhelmed, that you're feeling stressed, that you're feeling disconnected. So I find myself doing that more often, and I think my coaching's evolved as that need has arisen, really, that people do need that headspace, that time, and that one-to-one where they can just be listened to, and someone will help them see what's going on for them, and they drawing on their own resources to work through that.
Yeah. Fascinating world. Do you what do you see the kind of future in coaching? It seems like it's becoming something more and more people are going to for as life gets busier.
It's true, and it feels like, as a coach, it feels like the market's quite saturated. If you want a coach, you can find a coach very easily. Go on Facebook. But I think the distinction between the kind of coaching that people are offering, the maturity of the coach and the kind of how they operate, whether or not they do CPD regularly, whether or not they're accredited, whether or not they've got a qualification. So there is a real difference in the kind of coaching quality, coaching experience that people can come up against. But personally, what I'm finding is I think people are looking for something a bit more somatic, a bit more. It's not not just coaching what's in someone's head. You're coaching how someone is experiencing their world, their life. And I'm starting to see that some of that is even tipping into the more spiritual sense, that how is this person in the world?
Well,
and that's really different, I think, to what, might have been where coaching came from, really, which is about, it is about supporting the top executives to be at the peak of their performance. And actually, I think there's becoming a shift now. It's about how people are being in the world, how people are sensing themselves, and how they actually want to be. I think that is tipping up against the more sort of spiritual. I mean, I offer coaching retreats in the south of France, and have chosen a place that feels there's a real stillness in the air. And it looks out onto the Black Mountains of the Pyrenees, and there's an ancient castle, and there's vineyards, and there's terrace gardens, and you are in this very, very ancient natural environment that really helps people come out of what's going on in the moment for them in their jobs, and actually experience the world, experience nature, experience a beautiful place that helps reset.
Do you have any advice for people wanting to get into the coaching world?
No. I'd say be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to coach, there's so many different types of coaching. There's so many different types of coaches.
Yeah.
But I think, do it for the right reasons. And I think being client focused is really important when you're a coach, helping someone see what they're ultimately looking to achieve, and you're just there, a facilitator of that process, helping them get where they want to be. If you're a coach who already has designed the product for the person and has already designed the service, you've not done the listening, you've not done the engaging, you've not built rapport, you're selling them something. And I think that's the difference between coaches who are really client focused and then coaches who are selling a coaching product or something that they think will help someone improve their life or operate differently in their business. I think that's quite different to having a an ongoing relationship with a person in a way that is all around their goals.
Yeah. Sounds like a great place to end the chat. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been really eye-opening, so and the coaching side of things and how it works and all that. And if anybody wants to, it's 5 ways to focus, and it's you can find it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And anywhere else?
Local bookshops. So we've got Simply Books in Bramall, I think, stocking it at the moment. Morton's Bookshop in Didsbury as well. And the e-books available as well as the paperback book. Yeah, thank you so much.
And what's the best way of getting in contact or finding you if anyone's interested in coaching?
Yeah, so on my website there's a contact form, so on theupconsulting.com you can go on there, or LinkedIn at Julia Wolfendale, and happy to chat with anyone that wants to start up a conversation.
Brilliant. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good.